American sculptor Cary Shafer is a classically trained stone carver whose breadth of work includes major architectural projects, private garden installations, and freestanding abstract sculpture. A native of Indiana, Cary attended the Chicago Art Institute before completing 4 years of training with Italian master carver Vincent Palumbo at Washington's National Cathedral. Apprenticed in the historic tradition, Cary learned stone carving's complex body of technical knowledge. Among the many ornamental stones, Cary carved the final gargoyle on the cathedral. I am pleased to have Cary Shafer as this week's Fort Wayne featured artist. Cary, welcome to Arts Weekly.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to meet you. Doing some research on your work, you are truly a classical sculptor. You have some twists on your sculptures that I have to say are whimsical and fun, but your craftsmanship is absolutely classical and beautiful. So thank you for joining me, and I'm glad you're in Fort Wayne. Yeah. Before we look at some of it, let's talk a little bit about your background as an artist. When did you start as an artist, and when did your passion begin?
Well, it happened late in life, and I think that was actually a blessing. I was 26 when I first started, and before that I would once in a while pick up a pencil and try to draw, and every once in a while I could do it, and then it would go away and I couldn't. And, I was doing normal white-collar jobs, and I was bored, and one day I had just come back from New York City to work for my father here, and I was really, really, really bored, and I went out in the backyard and picked up a little piece of limestone, and I sat down, put it between my bare feet, and picked up a hammer and a screwdriver, and just started dinking on it, and something snapped in my head. It just clicked, and I thought, wow, I think this is what I want to do. And quite arrogantly, I had seen a book in the bookstore in the mall with about Michelangelo, and on the cover was the David. And I thought, I can do that. I had never seen it before.
In my dad's
been
backyard,
right.
I will get some limestone.
Yes, I had never been exposed to the arts, obviously, and I was the guy that sort of made fun of the artists growing up.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I was a bad guy. I was kind of a jock, and then
okay.
Once I got to the cathedral and my career started, and I realized there was almost a whole different person inside of me, I went back and apologized to all the people that I made fun of.
Wow.
I said, I'm sorry, I'm one of you now.
I'm one of you, and you can make fun of me now.
Right, right.
Limestone, it's a good start. It's fairly soft, is that correct?
Yeah, it's really considered probably the best carving stone. It's certainly the best building stone because it's very consistent, and the stone in Indiana is the best building stone in the world. People always say, how do you equate it to marble? And well, marble has grains in it, and it oftentimes, a really good marble, the light looks like it's reflecting from inside of it. With limestone, it's much more of a blank canvas, and the light bounces off it. So I sort of look at when I'm carving limestone as opposed to marble, I'm doing a charcoal drawing. So I'm trying to get as many gradients of light and dark and bring it up as if I was doing a three-dimensional charcoal drawing. And that's much different than the marble because the marble light is almost sometimes comes from within it.
Yeah, I was surprised to learn that southern Indiana has a fair amount of limestone available to artists and is mined in southern Indiana.
Yeah, there's enough limestone left in the United States, in southern Indiana, to rebuild every building that was ever built. Wow. And now it's becoming economically more viable to use it as a building material, so they're pulling it out of the ground and they're slicing it up and they're facing buildings with it, which is still better than nothing. Right. But the skilled jobs of knowing how to carve it and design in the stone is what's been lost.
So at 20-something, you all of a sudden discovered you had this passion. What was the next step? Because all of a sudden we're in Washington, D.C. at the National Cathedral.
Fast.
That doesn't happen for most artists fast. So
no. I
what was that leap?
Worked for my father for a year. I said, I'll give it a year. I had this discovery. I quit the... and said I would like to be an artist, so I took a couple art classes, having never done it before, and then I went to the Art Institute, which I felt very lucky to get in. And I was going for a master's, and they said, well, come up here for the summer since you have had no undergraduate art classes and you might want to catch up on some. So when I was there for the summer, very happy, I was dinking on a piece of stone outside, and I thought, well, winter's going to come soon, and I'd like to find a studio. So that day on the cover of the Reader, which is the Chicago free paper, there was an article about a guy who had just come back from the National Cathedral, and stone carver. So I got hooked up with him, and he knew the master was looking for an apprentice. And one fluke led to another, and within 3 weeks I was at the cathedral.
Wow. Let's look at some of your images. if we can, and talk a little bit about what kind of work they take. Well, these are not any of their sculpture. These are for the bikes, IPFW Sculpture with Purpose. You did 2 bikes, correct?
Yeah,
and this is the first one, which I think is on Main Street, is it not?
Yes, it is. That's the unicycle. However, it was just recently hit by a car.
Oh, no.
Just like the one in front of the museum. So it's back in my studio, and we're awaiting insurance details so I can rebuild it.
So you can rebuild it.
A car hit a car that ran into it.
Wow. I guess they'll be moving that next time, won't they?
Probably, but that was really fun to do because that's limestone and steel.
Oh, terrific.
So,
yeah.
you know.
And the second sculpture that we had, the second Sculpture with Purpose, was another bike rack.
Yeah, and this was called Curiosity, and it, the idea was to put a whimsical sort of bent on the idea of curiosity.
Right.
So, and I wanted to do a very simple and abstract, almost line drawing, because the backdrop of the building allowed for it.
It's all steel?
It's all steel, yeah.
And it's not going to be hit by anything because it looks like it's pretty far in the
Let's hope not.
sidewalk.
You know, it's again, if it does, we can rebuild them.
Yeah, I'm interested
unlike
in
a carving that, you know.
I'm interested in the image we have. We have a double image of, I don't know if it's on a religious building or not. Can we have that image of might be the devil?
No, that's my satyr.
Yes.
Yes, the garden sculptures. Well, this is for a commission in Indianapolis, and I have clients in Indianapolis. I've been working on their place for many years. And they like the whimsical, they sort of create their own mythologies. And this is sort of their garden gods. And this was, you know, the satyr is the, is one figure, and the female figure is sort of Eve, and she's sort of the, you know, the Mother Earth.
It's a beautiful piece that's very traditional in its work. We have others of your work we'll just cycle through as we continue to talk. When did you move out of stone and into other mediums?
Just recently, I had been doing commission work almost primarily in limestone for almost 20 years. And as much as I love doing that, and a job might take 6 months or 2 years, it kept me in a universe that I was ready to try to do some other things. I really wanted to learn to weld, and so last year I learned to weld. And at that same time, I was given the opportunity to do these bike racks. So I thought this is a great opportunity to take what I know about designing stone, and then also what I'm going to learn with the steel, and combine it, and I can do some of the abstract things that I've wanted to do, some of much more contemporary work. Still using the, you know, the highest language of line and shadow and objects, but
you said that you wanted to look like a line drawing. Does that mean that your fundamentals of art, if you will, are improved since that time? And because you said you didn't really draw, sometimes you did, sometimes
yeah,
you
know,
didn't.
I had to teach myself. Once I got to the cathedral, and all of a sudden here I am, I'm carving, you know, architectural ornaments and angels and gargoyles. I put myself also through a kind of a boot camp of learning to draw, and I went to the museums every day to look at what made a good drawing, what made a good painting, what made a good sculpture, I needed to learn, because you can learn a technical aspect, but if you don't know why one thing is better than another, why one choice is, because after all we do is make choices.
Right, absolutely.
And I wanted to know what choices I could make, and that along with, I wanted to have as big a vocabulary as possible, and the cathedral allowed me to learn a big vocabulary.
I always tell my young artist students, I mean my actors and directors and whatnot, that you're making a mistake. You're not breaking the rules. You only get to break the rules when you know how the rules work. There's mistakes, and there's rule breaking that is done with some purpose. Right. Because you know how to make it work.
And I equate it, people go, you know, this thing about abstract. I said, you really can't abstract if you can't do it for real. It's like, you know, if you can't speak French and someone wants you to speak, you're just speaking gibberish.
Yes,
what do you
absolutely.
say? So I always found it was very important, and that's why it's kind of exciting now to take what I know all about the classical and romantic and Baroque, or you know, language, and really pare it down to the most basic elements and still have an impact. And it's almost harder to do a simple piece as it is a complicated piece, because you can throw all your, you know, tricks at it, and people go, wow, look at that. And, but a simple piece requires it really to be much more concise.
So would you say then you're really moving away from this traditional carving? Or
not necessarily.
Sculpture?
I'm finishing up a project that's been almost 4 years in the making, and it's the second figure of these two figures. And it's become harder and harder to not only do that kind of work because, you know, in the past I might be able to spend 6, 7, 8 months in a row working and then take some time off and do it again. My life is such where I'm not able to work like that, and also physically I can't work like that. Right. If the right job came along or the right commission came along, I would certainly go back to doing that. But I'm kind of excited now about working on public work, which has a whole different set of filters to make decisions through, and continuing my line of much more abstract work, which is still basic shapes, but still telling a story that way.
Right, right. How can people get information about your work? Is there do you have a website or a contact that people can see more work? And
yeah, my website is caryshafer.com.
Okay.
And there's a fairly easy site to manipulate through, just to see different kind of pictures. There's cathedral work, there's commission work, then there's some work on my abstract stuff and more recent things. But for so long, you know, I just kind of kept private because I was working on a commission and I didn't want anybody to see it, and it was going to go from the studio to the
home or to the garden or the site.
So it's only recently that things are now, I'm much more open about the work that goes on.
I'm always surprised by how private artists are about their work and how intimate it is for them, that it's difficult to put it out there. I come from the theater where we're just out there all the time, you know, so that surprises us.
Right. I have a relationship with this thing before anybody ever meets it, and then it's gone and, you know, it's ready for the next one.
Well, Cary, thank you for joining me on Arts Weekly. I really appreciate you being a featured Fort Wayne artist for us today. And your work's terrific.
Thanks.
And I happen to be on the committee that chose the bike racks. And that whimsical one that got hit by a car was one of the first choices. So,
well, thanks. Well, we will rebuild it.
Good. I don't want to. I want it to come back. Maybe not the same spot.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm John O'Connell, Dean of the IPFW College of Visual and Performing Arts. Tune in to the next Arts Weekly to hear about the Fort Wayne Civic Theater's production, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, from director Craig Humphrey and actress Renee Gonzalez. Then Sue Davis from the Orchard Gallery will be here to talk about their current and future art exhibits.